18. This Mishnah is from Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon was the student of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, who was referred to as a Yirei Chet, someone who fears sin. That was his quality. And he's going to also make three statements. We'll just do the first today. Rabbi Shimon Omer. Rabbi Shimon says, Heve Zohir b'kriyas Shema uvat tefillah. You should be extremely careful, meticulous in your saying, in the reciting of Kriyas Shema, and in tefillah, which refers to prayer, but specifically, of course, we know Shemona Esrei is the core of the prayer service. So one should be careful in how you read it, and really not just how, but when. And we'll see in a moment. So just first, just regarding Rab Shimon, so his quality, we said, was fear of sin, and really Shema is we learned in the Talmud in Brachos 5a, which we mentioned, I think, a week or two ago or a few weeks ago, in some other context, that Shema is by reciting Shema, if the Yetzer Hara is coming after you, you're being enticed to do something, recite Shema. It's one of the ways to combat your evil inclination. And since he was the person who was fear of sin, it was his high quality, so it makes sense for him to say, oh, so we got to say Shema, we got to be careful in the Shema, because that's how we're going to deal with avoiding sin. Rashi and others point out here that we have Shema and we have Tefillah and Shemona Esrei. Now we know that there is specific timing with regard to the mitzvah of Shema. So we say Shema twice a day, right, the morning and the evening, but there's a special time for it. That it's in the morning. The time for Shema is during the first 3 hours of the day. So let's say a quarter of the day, and the daylight hours. The time for in the evening is after nightfall. Shemona Esrei also has a time, and the time for Shemona Esrei is the first third of the day, the first 4 hours in the morning. And then in the afternoon, it's after a little bit, half an hour after the noon time, up until sunset. And then the evening prayer, Mariv, goes from nightfall. So each of them have their set time. And Rashi explains that what he's telling is, make sure that when you are praying, you're saying it at the right times, because in order to get the mitzvah, the mitzvah of saying prayer applies at a specific time, and Shema is specifically at those times. So he's telling you be careful about that. Rabbeinu Yonah takes a little bit of a twist, and he says actually it's telling you to be more careful about Shema than Tefillah, than Shemona Esrei, because you have less time. Shema is only a 3-hour period, and Shemona Esrei you have a 4-hour period, so you have to be more careful. And in fact, the Rabbeinu Yonah says it's really even earlier than that, because the ideal time to say Shema is by sunset. So sunrise, which is certainly way earlier than that. And therefore, you have to be even more careful to do so. Another idea that I saw regarding this, the way Rabbeinu Yonah learns it, is that Shema is something you should be more meticulous in than Shemona Esrei, is because Shemona Esrei, what you're doing in Shemona Esrei is you're asking Hashem, give me this, give me that. We praise Hashem, but essentially we're asking for Hashem to give us. In Shema, we're actually talking about that we are committing to Hashem. We are saying, we're saying, we have faith, right? That we believe Hashem is one, and then we're talking about doing mitzvos and the reward and punishment, etc. And essentially, we're committing. So it's much harder for us to commit than for us to ask for someone else to give. And therefore, he says, be more meticulous in the Shema, even more so than in the Shemona Esrei. Also, we know that Shema, the first part for sure, right? Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. That is what we call Kabbalat Ol Malchut Shemayim, which is we are accepting upon ourselves the yoke of heaven. As we are saying, Hashem is running the world. He's one. He created everything, and therefore we are accepting Hashem's kingship. That requires a little more attention than everything else, and therefore, again, be more meticulous in Shema. Excuse me. Now, the Tiferes Yisrael has a totally different way of reading it, and he is saying that it's not coming to teach us that you should say Shema. And it's not telling you that you should say Shemona Esrei, and it's not telling you what time, because those we know already. Those are the laws. So it's not doesn't have to tell me do what you're supposed to do. He understands it as that these are things that you're going to be saying it all the time, right? How many times a day do we say Shema? We say it twice a day. How many times a day you say Shemona Esrei? 3 times a day. If you do a little calculation, depending on how old you are, I every once in a while do a little calculation and I figure out how many times, just take Shema, even Shema, twice a day. How many times have I said Shema in my life if I'd only said it twice a day? And I did it for, I don't want to tell you how many years, right? But let's say even if I just did it for 60 years, right? I didn't say it as a little baby, right? So 365 days a year times that twice a day, you're talking about tens of thousands of times, right? I think whenever the last time I was doing a thing about Shemona Esrei, it was over 50,000 times that I've said Shemona Esrei, right? It's probably, actually by now it's like 60,000 times. So you know what happens when you do that? Say it every day, you kind of are not paying attention anymore because it's just like automatic. It's automatic. You don't even have to think about it. So he says that you have to be careful. That's the reason to be even more careful, because you're so used to saying it that you're just saying the words, but you're not necessarily paying attention to what you're saying. And therefore we have to be careful about that. Now Shema has, in particular, Shema, as we mentioned, has all the basics of faith in it. So the first part is belief in the oneness of Hashem. We talk about v'ahavta es Hashem Elokecha, an obligation to love God, an obligation to fear God, right? All of these are in the first paragraph. And the second paragraph talks about that we are saying that we believe that Torah, Hashem gave the Torah. We are talking about reward and punishment, that we believe in, right? These are part of the 13 principles, right, that we've learned about. That we are saying that if we are going to do the mitzvahs, Hashem's going to reward us. If we're not, he's going to punish us, right? That's all built into the second paragraph of Shema. And talking about this world and the next world, right? Laman yirbu yemechem v'yimei b'nechem al ha'adama, and that all of that is not just about this world, but it's about the world to come as well. So all of our core beliefs are really inherent in the Shema itself. And finally, the third paragraph is telling us that we should not follow the Yetzer Hara, right? Don't go out. Don't follow your heart. Don't follow your eyes, right? That's talking about the heart is the evil inclination, the Yetzer Hara. It's trying to convince you to do things. Which he says are referring to thoughts that lead you astray. It doesn't have to be just what you see with your eyes, but it's also what you're seeing in your mind, that things that you're thinking about. And so that's where all sins ultimately stem from that, from either things that you are thinking about that are wrong, or things that you are being convinced to do that are wrong. And since these, all that we mentioned, are such basic core beliefs, so that's why Hashem says say it every day, say it twice a day. And if we are going to be just saying it by rote and saying it without having any idea of what we're saying and not paying attention to it, so then we're really not accomplishing anything, because maybe technically you'll get the mitzvah of saying it, but in terms of fulfilling the purpose, you haven't, because the whole purpose is to instill within us, is to strengthen our beliefs and to keep us from doing things that we shouldn't be doing. And if we're not paying attention to the words, then we're missing that point. And same thing with Shemona Esrei is the same idea, that the idea is to be paying attention to what we're saying. And when we are just rattling it off, then we're missing the point. And unfortunately, I think many of us are privy to this problem, and it is something that we all need to work on. We will hold it there. Have a great day, everyone.